News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users. On demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on Blip TV and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you are encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. No retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show, and I remind you to go to the Paltalk News Network website, which resides at reportergary.com. reportergary.com. Go there early, go there often to check for stories that you may or may not see, hear, or read in the mainstream media. We update it all the time, and also you should go there early and often because it'll make you feel like you're voting in Chicago. I'm your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Last night at a memorial that some criticize as a pep rally, but maybe Tucson, Arizona needed a pep rally, the President of the United States addressed a huge crowd at the University of Arizona, at which he made the chilling announcement that Gabrielle Gifford that very evening had opened her eyes for the first time, shortly after he and First Lady Michelle Obama visited. And he also echoed my call. Well, he wasn't echoing mine. I'm sure he didn't get the idea from me, that we interject a degree of civility into the political discourse in the United States of America. Ralph, could you please roll that tape?
The loss of these wonderful people should make every one of us strive to be better. To be better in our private lives, to be better friends and neighbors and co-workers and parents. And if, as has been discussed in recent days, their death helps usher in more civility in our public discourse, let us remember it is not because a simple lack of civility caused this tragedy. It did not. But rather because only a more civil and honest public discourse can help us face up to the challenges of our nation in a way that would make them proud.
You know, I've got to say it was probably a speech of a lifetime for President Obama. And with the exception of that chilling comment, uplifting comment that Congresswoman Giffords had improved that very evening, as far as I'm concerned, of all the wonderful things he said in about 35 minutes or 38 minutes of that speech, that was the singularly most important point that he made. That we have to interject a degree of civility into our discourse. Not muzzle ourselves, not tell people that they don't have a right to their point of view, but to ask that those of us who have a bully pulpit, those of us who have an audience, be responsible in the way in which we present our points of view. I haven't even gotten into the issue of being accurate in our argumentation. We're not even close to making that point. Joining me to discuss this philosophy, this vision, is Craig Barnes. Craig is a newspaper columnist, a radio talk show host, and a community activist, and has long been a proponent of civility in public discourse. Craig Barnes, welcome to News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network.
Thank you, Gary. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you, and especially on such short notice. I understand you juggled your agenda a little bit to accommodate me, and I appreciate that. Craig, your thoughts about what we just heard the President of the United States say last night?
Well, I think the President is true to his form. He's not making that up. What's extra persuasive about it is this is probably vintage Obama. This is not a caricature, or this was not created for the event. You could tell by the seriousness of his manner, by the way he himself was moved by the fact that Gabby Giffords had opened her eyes, the way Michelle was looking at him, that she knew he was authentic. There was nothing rehearsed or put on for show. There was an authentic reaching out from a man who's deeply moved by the whole experience, and I think that comes through, and that is probably as beneficial for the country as anything we could imagine. That there is a leader both who senses the depth of the tragedy and also lifts us out of it in a direction toward. I love the line. The part that I loved was let's work together to create a country and a civil discourse that's as good as Christina, the young Christina, imagined. Well, that's pretty wonderful. All right, let's work for that.
You know, somebody's typing in our virtual auditorium. Of course, you're on the phone. You can't see it, Craig Barnes. He is not God. She was going to open her eyes anyway. I, for one, don't understand how people extrapolate from what the president reported last night. And by the way, P.S., he asked Congresswoman Gifford's husband for permission before he reported this. I didn't hear him taking credit or suggesting that he was God or a Messiah. He was just reporting to a community and a country that so needs to hear something positive as a result of this tragedy. A tremendous new news. And I thought it was apropos. Where do people get the idea that he was, as was implied by the comments posted in our virtual auditorium by that individual, that he was making political fodder out of this? I didn't get that impression.
Well, it's a requirement that for a president to reach out to the country as a whole. Bill Clinton had to do this. George W. Bush had to do this. It's happened before with catastrophes. It's appropriate and useful for the leader of the country to reach his arms out and try to give us some encouragement. And I think the thing that stands out about Obama is that he is conscious of the need to advance the civil in civilization. Is probably his whole effort in trying to accommodate with the Republican Congress this last 2 years, trying to find ways to get that discourse going. All of that is consistent with what he said last night, that he's trying to find a way to empower civility. And that's the thing that's the part of the story, that's the national history that is significant. If this civilization, if this culture doesn't become gradually evolve toward a greater civility in our culture, what are we doing? If all we are doing is trading material goods and fighting back and forth for power, that's not different than kings and queens from all of history. So if he and I think Obama senses that and thinks that we have to underscore the rule of law, we have to underscore civility, and you can't get civility by attacking Sarah Palin or attacking Arizona politics or attacking the climate. So I thought he was wise to not take on and make somebody responsible for this. It isn't somebody, it isn't one thing, but we do need to create an atmosphere which discourages the use of guns in situations like this, discourages the suppression of democracy. And I thought he said it as brilliantly as we've heard it said.
Well, you know, you mentioned previous presidents, Craig Barnes, who have, at times of need, risen to the occasion. President Bush, George W. Bush, did so following the 9/11 attacks, appropriately so. FDR did so following the attack on Pearl Harbor, appropriately so. Now, I wasn't around during FDR's days, but I clearly was here, unfortunately, right there, reporting on September the 11th, 2001. And I heard those words, and he spoke to me. I did not hear people suggest that he acted inappropriately, George W. Bush. I'm certain nobody suggested that FDR acted inappropriately when they addressed the nation at a time of crisis. It used to be in the United States of America, when something horrific occurred, such as what occurred on Saturday in Tucson, at least for a moment, we put aside our partisan bickering, and we are no longer partisans, but we are united as one. as Americans. Eric, welcome to News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network. If you can make your question extremely brief, you might even get an answer.
Well, it wasn't so much a question, but I just wanted to reiterate what the guest has said, that from what I saw, this was a perfect opportunity to demonstrate leadership. And as much as I am upset with Obama about a few things, he demonstrated leadership at this point. This was something that we as a country desperately needed in terms of what, to comfort us during this time of tragedy, and also to, help us at least be better people because of it. So I just wanted to reiterate what the guest said. I just want to say thank you for sharing with us. Have a nice day, Gary.
Well, thank you, Eric. And I would presume in your closing remarks, Craig Barnes, you would agree with our previous caller.
Well, yes, that's a nice thing to say, and I think the public as a whole is going to respond as generously to the president as the president tried to respond to the people of Arizona last night, and that's this is a good, sometimes out of tragedy, we can lift our sights to do better, and I hope we will.
We'll have you back in about a month, Craig Barnes, and let's assess then whether we have seen a change in the political discourse, whether a month from now it is more civil than it has been in the past, or whether we're right back where we were before all of this occurred. I, unfortunately, am pessimistic that it'll be the latter rather than the former. Craig Barnes, our guest today. He is a newspaper columnist and an author and a community activist. Thanks for joining us today on News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network.
Pleasure, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now let's go across the pond to Cassandra in the United Kingdom.
I listened to parts of Obama's speech, Gary, and I thought I was listening to a rally, sort of about pretty much about his side of things. There was an assumption made that this act had been perpetrated as a result of the rhetoric, whereas we had this discussion yesterday that said that this guy who did this egregious act was not, in fact, necessarily influenced by it. He didn't address the need to take more care of people within the community who have very oddball ideas. He didn't address any of this. The ways in which the country can do this. The other thing that I'd say is that this is something that's been going on for at least the last 3 years. Throughout the campaign, there has been this type of political rhetoric that's been given out. I suppose, dirty politics. And I'm not just saying that it happens in America, because it certainly doesn't. It happens in this country to a lesser extent, but it nevertheless happens. And it came from the left, it came from the right, it comes from all sides. There is a general lack of civility, and it essentially comes because the people at the top, and I'd say Bush and Obama, do not stop this sort of campaigning. They don't stop this sort of rhetoric going on. And if they don't, sort of definitely stop it, then in a way they buy into it. Thank you.
Well, I don't think that Bush nor Obama are particularly guilty of that kind of campaign rhetoric, but I do believe that people who speak on their behalf clearly are. But I would point out that the president did say in that clip that Ralph played for us that all of that stuff had nothing to do with what occurred on Saturday. He specifically said that. It did have a rally atmosphere. When the governor of Arizona went up to the podium, the people cheered as well. Remember, they were mainly university students, and it was in a sports arena where this was held. And some may feel that that was unseemly, but perhaps, as I said at the opening of the show, what that community needed was a rally, rather than a somber occasion. And it clearly, especially with the good news about Representative Giffords and the acknowledgement of the heroes there, including Mr. Rodriguez, who helped save her life, the intern in her office, who shakes off the term hero that has been placed upon him by many, including the President of the United States, and that little woman who wrestled away the clip so the gunman couldn't reload, to the doctors who heroically worked to save as many lives as they could. You know, maybe that's what we needed to hear at that moment. I don't know.